Wonderful. There we go. Awesome. Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Back to our usual gathering. Thanks for joining. Just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, awesome. Good stuff. And so, Caroline, I'm going to ask you just keep admitted people as they come in, if you don't mind.
Yep.
And then otherwise, again, just a friendly welcome back. This is crazy that this is our last episode. I feel like it kind of just began, but I hope that you all felt that this has been impactful. I know as facilitators, we are hopeful that it has been. And so tonight we start our 4th episode, and essentially that is going on to how to act in the community. And we're hoping that everything that you've learned from previous episodes to now will hopefully prepare you to go out and do amazing things in your community. And so what we can do is head to the next slide. Okay, great. Next slide, please. All right, awesome. So just to give you a summary of what we will be doing tonight, we'll be doing an intro, going over our pre-work that we did. We will be going over anti-racism and allyship spectrum, some action and resources. We do have an amazing speaker tonight. I'm so excited for you all to get to see her, meet her. She is extremely charismatic, so I'm very excited. Breakout groups, gathering space, and then just a final thank you. Next slide. So we're actually gonna spice things up tonight. We are going to do a poll. So Ella, if you don't mind kicking that off.
All right, so question number 1 is, were you able to complete this week's challenge and support a Black-owned business? So take time, please select yes or no.
And this is anonymous, so
yes.
Just. Alrighty.
All right, a few more people. 10 more seconds.
All right, so we need a little bit more commitment, but close. Thank you to those that have, and again, you still have plenty of time to do that.
All right, closing in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Well, good to know. Just a little check-in on some pre-work in the challenge, and we can head to our next slide. Alrighty, so again, just going back to our pre-work, this week you all had an action plan to create. Those will be touched upon more in the breakouts. But as far as the Allyship Accomplice article, the what, the why, the how, just to go over a few things that are key findings was, as far as allyship goes, many people think it is a noun. It's actually a verb. So it's great if you want to be anti-racist, you know, fight for equality and fight against discrimination, but there's just so much more to it besides that. You can say it, but that doesn't really hold too much water unless you actually put work behind it. So that was one of the big things that came out of that. Another one is for those that are in the white community, please ask those that are in marginalized groups, you know, how you can be of support, because again, everyone wants to be supported in different ways. There really is no clear path. So those that are close to you and are in different, you know, have different races, have those conversations, and definitely don't shy away, even though again, a little uncomfortable. But for those that are in the Black community and in minorities, challenge your friends. I feel like it has been so healthy for me to have tough conversations with those that I love and care about, because even though I'm saying I'm an ally, sometimes you have to kind of get woke, if you will, or you just have to understand that there's just so much more beyond allyship than just saying you're an ally. Just because you support them does not just mean you're an ally. You need to bring all your tools and really hop on board. And then part of this journey is also being afraid to mess up. I'll be honest, doing this Zoom series, I was extremely nervous that I would mess something up. And honestly, I probably have. And if I did, I apologize. But it is very nerve-wracking coming on here and being vulnerable and knowing that, okay, I'm not going to say everything 100% right, but my intention is there. But even sometimes when your intention is there, it is not exactly the way that people feel supported. So going into getting called out and how to apologize, that video that was from your pre-work, even though we have given you a bunch of tools to go out and do great things in the community, you will still continually be learning. You will still fall and you will still be learning. And I think it's so important just to recognize your intent versus the impact that you send someone. You might not even know that you have affected someone. I will say a very brief, embarrassing moment that I had in college where, and again, this is not involving any racial situation. This was just a very dumb thing that I did in college. I was a freshman and Hurricane Sandy had come and had destroyed, I mean, so many different parts of the East Coast, and Halloween came around, and I thought, you know, coming from someone that was never affected by Hurricane Sandy, you know, wouldn't it be kind of funny if I was Hurricane Sandy for Halloween? Like, I know. Yeah, I know. Sorry, Mom. I know you're probably like, I raised this child. But no, so I post on Instagram. I mean, it was very funny to those that were not impacted, but I had someone approach me and said, you know, I no longer have a roof over my head. My dog died in that. And I'm sitting there at a party like, oh my God, I cannot believe that did not resonate with me. So it's one of those things where your intent was to potentially be funny, but then your impact could have just been so much more. And again, I think back to that, I cringe, but I think just taking ownership and responsibility is a big part of that. So just thought that was something I'd share, just be a little vulnerable moment, not proud of it, but something that I have learned from. And we can head on to the next slide. All right, so this is a video that's just gonna kind of kick us off on ways to be a better ally, and then we can really jump into exactly what that means. Oh, sorry, I can't hear it.
And today we're talking about allyship. A big thing to remember is that allyship isn't passive. If there's a war, your allies don't just sit there like, oh my gosh, genocide? Oh, that sucks, man. Oh, I can't.
Oh, let's see.
Okay, let's try it again.
Lean on me when you're not strong. Hey, it's Asante, and today we're talking about allyship. A big thing to remember is that allyship isn't passive. If there's a war, your allies don't just sit there like, oh my gosh, genocide? Oh, that sucks, man. Oh, I can't. It's so hard. I don't get it. People can be so awful. I'm totally on your side. The times we live in, it's just so hard. No, they lend their troops, they lend their ships, they send supplies, they send medics, they will go in and fight for you. Allyship is not neutrality. Allyship is not, I believe in you. Good luck. Allyship is an active process that you're always working on. So here are a few steps you can take to be a better ally. First, listen and educate yourself. When people in marginalized groups tell you about harassment or hardships that they're facing because of that marginalization, believe them wholeheartedly. If you feel ignorant in some areas, feel free to ask questions, but maybe ask them to Google first. Trust me, I've asked Google some pretty weird things. It's never offended, and it always has some sort of answer. It's not anyone's responsibility to be your personal tutor on social issues, especially if you're not paying them personal tutor money. There are plenty of resources that are already out there. People who have shared their perspectives in books, articles, YouTube videos. Find the resources that have already been laid out for you. Find the people who are already talking about this stuff online. And as an ally, you should be constantly learning. There's not the Black experience or the queer experience or the experience of being a disabled person. There are so many different ways of walking through the world, being perceived by others, and living at the intersection of various identities and abilities. So even if you think you've heard everything, listen. The second thing that you can do to be a good ally is to uplift marginalized voices. Retweet them, mention them to your friends, highlight them, spotlight them, feature them, hire them, and hire them into positions of authority where they feel empowered to voice their concerns and act on them. Consult with people of color and trans people and neurodiverse people, and then pay them for their time because consulting is a job. Wherever you can, bring diverse people into the conversation. A third thing you can do as an ally is speak up. When you see injustice, when you hear someone being bigoted, call them on their BS. Yeah, it may make you uncomfortable having to point out that someone's being racist, but imagine how uncomfortable Black and brown people feel having to live with that crap every day. It can even be easier to call something out if it's not being directed at you and challenging your very existence. As an ally, you can take that burden off of someone who is already hurting. And if you remain neutral in that sort of situation, you're not an ally. you're not helping. Some people also worry about it being not their place to, for example, speak of issues of race if they're white. But speaking up about injustice isn't the same as speaking for a marginalized group. It is everyone's place to call out problematic behavior, especially since as an ally, you're in a position of privilege and have less fear of retaliation. White people who are slightly racist are more likely to listen to other white people. So as a white ally, it's on you to get your people. Go get your mans. Whose mans is this? Your relatives are likely to listen to you because they usually care about you at least a little bit, and you kind of can't avoid them. So when you're sitting around the table and your auntie acts like people can't be bisexual, call her on it. That is your role as an ally. Bring a supportive voice to the table at tables where I'm never invited to sit. Reach your communities that I don't have access to. Use your privilege to speak where other people would be silenced. Another thing.
So again, I know it did cut off, but that was the bulk of what we were really trying to embed in this episode. So we can head to the next slide. And I'm going to have Lucy take it over for a few moments.
Okay, hi everybody. Just want to give you a heads up as to what this segment is going to involve. I'm going to speak on allyship and how it relates to anti-racism work just for 4 to 5 minutes. And Steve Pomplin, who is of a different gender and a different generation, is going to be listening, and he will follow up with anything I miss or screw up and or his take on any of all of this, okay? So, and again, we're just going to be drilling down on a lot of the same points tonight. I'm following up with the young woman in the video with what is the journey of allyship and what does that entail. I'm going to be briefly doing definitions, looking at some pitfalls, and suggesting a strategy. And we're going to begin, there's a lot of different theories and theoreticians out there who have a lot of different ways of explaining like the spectrum or continuum of allyship. And I picked the shortest because we're time limited here. So we're going to talk about being an actor, an ally, and an accomplice. And you can see that the color goes from cold, warm, and hot. Okay, they're very different experiences. But before I even get into those definitions, I want to just name the 4 values that are going to be undergirding, that are very foundational for the work of being an ally. Privilege, decentering, humility, and solidarity. Everything that I'm going to be talking about rests on our privilege as white people, decentering as white people, humility, and solidarity. All right, we've talked about privilege already in this series, and I think we've all identified or at least acknowledged we certainly have it, those of us who are white. And the good thing about us being allies is we can use our privilege. We can leverage our privilege that Black people do not have. So that makes us very, very useful. But the next word, decentering, is where the problem comes in. White people not necessarily used to taking the back seat. And, you know, there's a lot of white people that have natural leadership abilities. And being an ally is not where you exert your leadership in the situation. Always follow the rules, the roles, whatever the program is laid out by the Black people in charge. That's what decentering is about. It's not about us. We use us for them. Maria already touched on humility. I'm sure there's nobody here who, you know, we all screw up, and we all know we all screw up. Plan on screwing up. Know that you will be screwing up. And be ready to apologize. And that's really where the humility comes in. I would also add that as empathetic as a white person can be, we cannot touch the experience of being born into a world where your people have been horrifically oppressed for 400 years. We can only bow down before that and take their lead. That is really what that's about. And solidarity is about leaving your place of privilege or safety and joining in the risky danger of the person who is marginalized or oppressed. And that really is what the role of the white person is in this. All right, so actor, ally, accomplice. An actor might have educated themselves They may have learned a lot of things. They may have good feelings about all races being equal, and that's all well and good. But it's not allyship. It is the beginning of what has to happen for allyship. Another term that you'll hear coming and going is, oh, that's just performative. What that person said or did is performative, which means social media postings, hashtags, in a way trying to look good without really having put your values or yourself on the line or created effective change. So the actor is very much the first stage. And Maria already said this, ally is a verb. And Black people would say allies don't name themselves. You get called an ally at some point in your journey. Allies actively challenge systemic racism and white supremacy wherever they find it. They disrupt and educate. And here's where white privilege and being white comes in. When you are in white spaces, people may have their guard down and say and or do things that are racist. An ally never doesn't step up to that challenge. They will always interrupt the racism. A term I heard was they do not allow racism to incubate in the white spaces that they are in. And just think about the impact that if a majority of white people in this country did that, think of the kind of change that could create. Allies are always learning, always educating themselves. And here's one that really got to me. Allies do not take breaks because they're in it with Black people who cannot take breaks from the oppression that they suffer and cannot walk away from. So once you have stepped up to be an ally, it is forever. You are always on duty. Now, accomplices. These are the people that most of us are pretty much in awe of. These are the people who directly challenge institutionalized racism, colonialism, white supremacy, by blocking or impeding with whatever they have, which is often just their bodies, blocking or impeding racist people, policies, and structures. I would imagine that, and we can hear more about this in discussion, that this would involve a lot of things like civil disobedience. So these are the people that are so dedicated because they have realized oppression of anyone eventually becomes oppression of everyone. It is in our own self-interest to promote equality for all, and they will do anything to achieve that. I think here of Daniel Berrigan. I hope most of you at least recognize the name. He was one of the Catonsville Nine. He was a Jesuit priest. He spent his adult life resisting American militarism by committing a lot of civil disobedience. And he once said in a talk, if you want to know what your values are, look at where your ass is. All right, like that's what you're putting on the line when you make these kinds of choices. And the accomplices also are the ones who take the same risks that the people of color have to take. So it's about disrupting and interrupting racism personally and institutionally. Okay, the next slide, please. This is where we get into the pitfalls of being an ally or an accomplice. And in one of the articles, I don't know if we gave you this article or not, but it's in the free will resource list. What you want to avoid at all cost, and I'm going to use a current reference, is either being a Karen or a Ken or a Chad. And I think you're all aware of the social media use of those terms. Karens, specifically being privileged white women who are obnoxious and loud and think that they're, the queen of the world, all right? But on the other hand, you want to get involved and do what you can do for the cause. And dialectical thinking has been suggested as a way of managing the tension of those two seemingly opposite goals. You don't want to be in the way, you don't want to be a jerk, but you're going to try to do what you can do. Dialectical thinking is a synthesis or integration of opposites. It means two opposing things being true at once. It's not either or, getting rid of that kind of black or white thinking, but it's inclusive. It's both and. I use this image from Martin Buber, who was probably the most famous and impactful Jewish theologian and philosopher of the 20th century. He referred to walking the narrow ridge as a metaphor of how to be an authentic human being, that you want your insides to match your outsides. And it's hard to always live up to your own values. And being on the top of a ridge like that, like one little small misstep, you know, you can fall, and you can fall pretty far. So it's a balancing act to keep you within a range. And again, we're not talking perfection, not even going to happen, so don't worry about it. You're going to screw up, don't worry about it. But as you proceed, maybe, you know, one day you'll slip on the left side, and then another day you'll slip on the right side, and that's all part of the balancing act of charting a middle way. And the second little slide here on the right says, and shows you the allyship applications of that. That dialect number one is, yes, speak out loudly against racism and do not talk over Black folks, all right? They are not complete opposites, they can be brought together. Black folks are the authority on their experience of marginalization or racism, and Black folks are not an ideological monolith, and one does not speak for all. So you have to balance and manage that. And dialectic number three, listen to people of color directly and don't demand free emotional labor. So I think you can see the kind of balancing act that all of that is. The last thing I want to say before I bounce it over to Steve, I don't know where I found this, but it's just a short paragraph from a white accomplice who's been at this for many years. Okay, so now can I say that I'm an accomplice or an ally? No, I don't get to bestow that title upon myself or claim that I am woke. As white people, none of us get to do that. Just as a recovering alcoholic is always recovering, we will always be allies in training. Even though I hope to be part of the solution as a well-intentioned white person, I must recognize that I will always be part of the problem. I may have learned from people of color about how to glimpse my better self, be a better friend, and stop needing recognition for being a good ally, but I can never fully understand their world or experience their truths. And that wouldn't be a bad reflection for allies to read and ponder every day. All right, Steve, go.
Lucy, you're so wise. Thanks. It's hard to follow up with you, but I want to start with thinking about the dialectic, and you know, a place that all of us were in is in a dialectical space for many of us, because we're centering on this self-reflection that is anti-racism. How have I participated in some of the systems, you know, referring to Lucy's last quote, how have I been a part of the problem, but also decentering and not making it all about you. I just want to mirror a lot of the language that we've talked about throughout the series, that, you know, being an anti-racist is something that you can be in the moment because it's a verb, but then you can shift out of quite easily. And so your ongoing challenge is keeping up this work and taking it beyond you, looking at the resources. Jordan and Lance are about to tell you some really good and tangible actions that you can take, but knowing that, you know, you can give yourself a small pat on the back for having, you know, spent your July with all of us, but don't pat yourself on the back for too long. This is something, anti-racist work has to be proactive. And I've been thinking a lot about that. We in America, like, where has our attention been focused? In May, in June, even 4 weeks ago when we started this series, just think about what your social media feeds look like. Think about what the headlines in newspapers look like. Think about where it's going to be 2 or 3 months from now. Anti-racist work is trying to be proactive in our daily lives, but also societally, and preventing systems from perpetuating injustice. And so that's like your ongoing challenge. And it's so hard to have just one episode about being an anti-racist and taking these next steps. I think Maria would have this be an ongoing series if we could. But thanks for being here. And Luce, I really like what you say about the dialectic, because I'm sure a lot of us are feeling conflicted on where to go beyond this series. But we've all learned a lot together, and I think you have a lot of the good tools. So just keep asking the questions and staying uncomfortable. So I guess with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Jordan and Lance, who are going to talk about some of those actions and bridge between the philosophy of anti-racism and the lifestyle and actionable items.
Yeah. And
actually, Ellie, you have a poll. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Before we have
No problem. Quick
poll.
poll. So in relation to being an ally, where do you fall on the spectrum?
Again, going back to what Lucy said, it's typically up to, well, not typically, it is up to the Black community to really acknowledge as to where we stand. But if you could put yourself somewhere, where do you feel like you would be? Alrighty.
10 more seconds. Three, two, one. Thank you, guys.
Alrighty, then on to the next slide.
So now we're going to talk about what specific actions can you take, and Lance and I are going to offer you some reliable resources. So the first suggestion that we have is to research and donate to reputable organizations, both nationally and locally. And we want to emphasize the research part of it too. Look into the organizations that you plan to donate to. Make sure that they are legitimate. Make sure that they are going to a cause that you truly believe in. And honestly, exactly what she was saying in the video, cough up the cash and donate to these organizations. The second suggestion that we have for you is to consider the conversations that you have at home and the way that you influence your children's perception of race. We do have a lot of moms and dads on as participants in this series. And so one suggestion that we have specifically for this is that you really tune into what your children are being taught in their history classes, look at the curriculum, look at what they're studying, and then you have to take your knowledge and the research that you've done and the resources that you've gotten just from this series and supplement their learning, because the reality of it is your children will not be taught an accurate picture of this in school. I don't think, your children, maybe your grandchildren. And then Lance, I'll pass it on over to you.
Okay, and then you could share like any black art. You could purchase it, like it, share it, retweet it, whatever. Those actions are actually free things that you can do, but it also promotes their business. Also research your local Black-owned businesses that are around you. There are a lot of them. Support them. Help generate money in the Black community, because they're hiring young kids in the Black community. Best way to stop crime is to get people off the streets with employment. So support these Black businesses as well. Attend a protest, research on social media. There's a lot of information out there that you can just find as far as when protests are. And then also just refer back to the free will resources that we provided along the way. They're really great resources. We took some time out to provide that for you all. So take some time and just look into it. But main thing here that we cannot stress is just research. Make sure you're donating, spending your time and your money with the cause that you can support.
Yep. And then a few extra actions that we do suggest you all to take is when it comes to your white community, it is everyone's place to call out problematic behavior. So take that risk to call it out when you see it in your families and even in your workplace, and especially in the workplace, because you do have that safety net of HR. So the conversation is really only going to go so far, because both parties are trying their best to keep it politically correct. And unfortunately, that is the society that we live in now, where race conversations sometimes are the safest to have at work. But, you know, if you want to progress from allyship to being an accomplice, that's a risk that you are responsible for taking in all spaces at all times. And if you are in a hiring position, similar to what Lance said, hire, you know, and it's not just about hiring Black people to keep them from, you know, to create job opportunities, which is a huge thing that Black-owned businesses do, creating job opportunities, but also hire Black people based on their merit into positions of power as they deserve it, and consider their race as a positive thing for when you hire them, the same way you would check off boxes on a resume. Diversity and having somebody who is Black on your team is a plus. And on to the next slide, we have another poll for you.
Quick poll. What actions have you taken / pledged to take in order to support the Black community? And you can pick multiple or you can pick one, up to you. Ten seconds. Three, two, one. Thank you.
So it looks like self-education takes the lead.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So
right.
now we will have a speaker. This is Monica Rosenblatt, and she is 24, living in New York. She is an actor, a model, and a singer, as well as an activist. So Monica, thank you for being here. We're so happy to have you. Our first question of the night is, what is your racial identification?
Yeah, sure. So hi, everyone. I'm Monica, like they said. I identify as biracial or mixed, whatever you want to call it. My dad is Black and Jewish, and my mom is Native American and English. I, for the longest time, didn't really say much of anything unless anybody asked. And that didn't have to do with personally any kind of shame or anything. I've always taken a lot of pride in my background, but it does have to do with the fact that I figured people wouldn't understand or they wouldn't see me the way I saw myself. But the way I see myself, the way I present myself these days is a biracial or a mixed girl.
Awesome. What is your definition for white passing?
Yeah, sure. So I am a white passing biracial person, which just means, at least to me, I'm not a dictionary, but somebody that is afforded the privileges of white privilege, but is not entirely a white person, right? So I am white, but I would not call myself a white person. I would call myself a mixed person or a biracial person. So that doesn't take away my white privilege. A lot of people don't see me the way I see myself. A lot of people don't see me as biracial. A lot of people don't see me as mixed. If I get pulled over, a cop might very well not see me the way I see myself. He, most of the time, will put down on the identification card, white or Latina, which neither of which I fully am. So you have to think, if I was a Black woman, if I was a darker skinned woman, would I be afforded the same privileges that I am afforded as a white passing person, as someone who looks white to a lot of different people, but who isn't strictly white?
Oh, wow. That's a great way of describing it. Would you mind sharing your biracial perspective on the country's current social climate?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to navigate as a biracial person because, and I think we're going to get into this too, but just like belonging to one community or the other or both, and finding the way that your voice is wanting to be heard, I guess, if that makes sense. A lot of the time, I feel insecure that my voice is not the one that needs to be heard. And that's not necessarily true, because if I can influence anybody that needs to hear something that I've got to say, then we've done a service. But it's tough, you know. You don't, at least for me, And I wonder if I was a darker skinned biracial person too, would it be different? Would I feel different? I think I might. But I'm always personally stuck in the middle of, do I want to say too much? Do I want to say too little? Am I supposed to speak right now? Am I not supposed to speak right now? Am I supposed to know more? The same way that poll just went out, you know, one of the boxes that I clicked was self-education, because as a biracial person and a white passing person, I should be self-educating myself just as much as the next person, just as much as the next white person, if not more. So there's no one word to sum up our social climate right now. You know, tough, shitty. There's no one word. I feel them all. I feel all of the emotions, and yet a lot of the time, I often let someone else take the lead when it comes to addressing what's going on. Going on.
I definitely think your voice should be heard too. So just wanted to.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do you identify closer to one community over the other?
For a while, I felt like I secretly identified to both because I wasn't very outward about the fact that I was mixed. Again, like if anybody ever asked me, I was super willing to talk about it. But looking back, did I know enough to really talk about being a part of the Black community when I was 11 years old? Probably not. But it's funny, you know, when I don't identify with one more than the other. No. Simple answer, no, I don't. I've got a lot of stakes in both communities. And a lot of stake in the third community, which is the biracial and mixed community, which I'm also a part of. And so sometimes, a lot of the time, and I think any biracial person will tell you this, they feel, and I feel, that I'm not Black enough for a lot of Black people, or I'm not white enough for a lot of white people, or I'm too Black for white people, or I'm too white for Black people. So it's hectic and chaotic and tough, but I just navigate it on a day-to-day basis, and I don't act any different than I do. I don't act any different around my white friends than I do around my Black friends. I'm the same Monica. My white and my Black friends and my Latina friends and my Jewish friends and my Muslim and Indian friends, we all hang out. It's all the same Monica that you're gonna get, you know. But sometimes I feel even more myself around the Black community than I do the white community.
Yeah. I really loved your answer. Do you identify as an activist? If so, in what ways are you acting for the white and Black community?
Yeah, I do consider myself an activist. I don't think it takes a lot to be an activist at the most basic level. I think everyone that's on this call has the opportunity to be an activist starting now. So yes, I do identify as an activist. Did I create this group? No. Would that have been an even better form of activism? Probably. Did I show up to protest after protest in the pouring rain? Yes. Did I donate? Yes. Did I buy a bunch of books on Amazon and read them all? Yes. Am I self-educated and having uncomfortable conversations? Yes. So all of that would be a form of activism to me. Being an actor and a singer and a model in New York City, not only, and a plus size girl, not only am I tasked with finding where I fit in the white Black community and the plus size community, but just in the arts as a whole, the industry that I work in is pretty mirror obsessed, and they're very much into the way you look and the way you sound and the way you act in the 30 seconds that you have in the room with them. And it doesn't have a lot to do with who you are as a human. And so in order to really progress the way I want to in my industry, I have to be an activist, because that's what sets me apart. Having a voice doesn't go unnoticed if you use it enough. And I use my voice a lot. So I'm starting to get a little bit more of a reputation in New York and where I live and the places that I perform and the people that I'm with as a leader and also a follower, because again, I think there are plenty of voices that need to be heard. And you have to be just as good at leading as you do following when it comes to this.
Yeah. So our last question for you is, what is the best advice you can give those in the white community on how to be the best ally or accomplice?
It's pretty simple. Listen and act.
Yeah.
Nobody got anywhere by keeping their mouth shut, right? So unless it's a silent protest, and in that case you're acting, right? So either listen or show up, but don't do either. I mean, don't do neither, right? You have to do both simultaneously. You can't listen and then while you're listening, not forming an opinion. You need to be forming an opinion, because I've found that tough conversations like these and tribulations like these, we don't always feel like we have something to say, especially, I'm sure, a white person that wants to be an ally and wants to be a good one. I feel like it's got to be tough, you know? They probably feel like they don't know when to ask the questions that they want to ask and that they want answers to. And they don't know when to use their voice and when not to use their voice. And the answer is to read the room and show up and use your voice as much as you possibly can. I've always thought that as a white passing person with privilege, I use my podium of privilege as an act for positive change for those that can't use their podium the same way I can, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Sometimes my podium is higher than a Black woman, which sucks. And so if you're a white woman or a white man and you're wanting to be an ally, listen to what Black people have to say around you. And then if you don't have an opinion right away, if you walk away for a few hours and you do something for yourself and you come back, I guarantee you'll have an opinion on the matter. I guarantee that if someone strikes with the conversation five hours later, you'll have something to say if you listened the first time around. So listen and then act.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Monica. This was all so very insightful. Hope like we all have something to learn from you.
Sorry, Caroline, I hate to interrupt you real quick, but Monica, I have a question for you real quick. And I know this is not what we planned, but I guess I'd never thought as we were writing these questions, like, you know, I think we just saw black and white, but we never addressed, you know, the biracial community and looking at it at its own. And I just want to say thank you, because it kind of just points out, not that it was intentional ignorance, and that's not what I think viewers are thinking, but I just, my brain didn't even go there. So I'm so grateful that you said that you identify with 3 different communities. I think that's amazing and beautiful, and I appreciate you pointing that out.
Sorry, my dog was barking. I muted it for a minute.
No worries.
No, yeah, I mean, and that's a whole other topic that we can get into on another one, I guess. But, you know, like even being a light-skinned biracial girl comes with its fair share of tense moments where you don't know exactly how to navigate them. You know, I'm not the darkest skinned biracial girl that you're going to meet. So that's a whole other thing, you know, finding my place in that community. And I found it. I think I found it. But, you know, I get picked on a lot of the time by my friends that are darker than me or that, you know, are, or even that are whiter than me. But it's just kind of, what's the saying? I'm going to blank on it. It's just kind of how it is, you know. I'm okay with that, being picked on or being prodded a little bit because of my lightness, if that makes my friends more comfortable and teaches me something along the way. It's not always comfortable, but it is what it is.
Well, thank you again. And Caroline, thank you for facilitating.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for having me.
Of course. Thank you, Monica. We're about to really hear how amazing your voice is.
So now we are going to head into a reflection. We are going to play a song sung by Monica, and we just want you to put yourself on mute and listen to the song and take a moment to reflect on what you've learned so far.
I Lord, just like that river I've been running ever since. It's been a long, long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die. I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long, long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. So I go to the movies and I go downtown. People keep telling me, don't you hang around. It's been a long, long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Yes, it will. Then I go to my brother and I say, brother, help me please. But he winds up knocking me back down on my knees. Oh, I don't know. All I know, got change gon' come. Every time that I thought I couldn't last long. Now I think I'ma have the strength to carry on. It's been a long, long time coming, but I know change gonna come.
Whew. Okay. All right, everybody. So with that being
Only slightly embarrassing.
No, thank you, Monica.
we've watched it, just the facilitators, we've watched it like 3 times together anyway. So
Thank you, Monica, so much.
so now we are going to head into our breakout groups, and Ella will set those up for us.